For everyone else, it says, I don't, well, you can't read it, but it says, "My journey begins today."
Yeah,
So.
love it. And the power scooter on it is so
Oh,
classic.
oh yes, yes. Yeah. So I actually like it because it's, it's a little bigger than a standard size mug, so
Yes.
I can get all the
Yes.
coffee I want.
Exactly.
All right, Matt, I think you are ready to go.
Okay. All right. Well, welcome everyone to the kickoff of the work from home pilot initiative. Actually, I'm not sure if my friends from Virginia Main Street know this. They probably do, but this is definitely one of the first. It is the first in the country, I think, of from the perspective of a coordinating group really kicking off on a pilot scale with their Main Street programs. This examination of the world of remote work and what does it mean for communities? How do you leverage it? And so you all are cutting new ground. It won't be the first time. It certainly is not the first time Virginia Main Street has done this. Small scale production was another initiative that you all started, and now I'm seeing Alabama and other places, South Carolina, lots of places start to pursue that as a sort of sector ecosystem that we can look for downtown. So Virginia Main Street, no surprise there. You all are on the cutting edge, and we're looking forward to joining the ride with you. This has been, before I kind of go into the covering the nuts and bolts of this and giving you all a chance to certainly ask questions as we review the sort of phases here. But when Vista, hey, you're there, Tom, and the mug just demonstrates that. But I mean, I think it goes without saying, and I think maybe in some of the trends and predictions with your the broadcast that you all were doing last year, that webinar series, that remote work really has an opportunity, especially for more rural economies, to kind of reset the stage. If you look at the past 4 decades alone, whether it's in demographic shifts, population loss, job creation, where businesses have migrated, rates of entrepreneurship, that rural economies have certainly been most impacted by those trend lines, that being negative trend lines. And what we saw with COVID was really an opportunity, whether it was in the remote workspace or in entrepreneurship or what have you, for people really to change the dynamic of how they make decisions about their living situations. That the density of or an agglomeration of talent that we saw in sort of more metroplex areas around the country was sort of turned on its head in many ways, as we decoupled the role of work density and perhaps where people live and the density there. And what you saw and what was evident in nearly every statistic was that suburban and rural or small towns were constantly being looked at as favorable when it came to where, like, Atlas van lines, where they were tracking where movers were going and where were sort of out migration and in migration points, where the state of Maine in 2021 was the number one destination. Not exactly a real urban, powerhouse by any means, or a job creation, but what it had was outdoor recreation, housing affordability, access to the Boston Metroplex for, if you needed to hop on a plane, or maybe you needed to go into the office or something along those lines, and Boston was your main point. And so these sort of characteristics, even if you look at like Redfin and Zillow, where housing searches were predominantly in 2020 and 2021 were again coming up with rural and small towns, as part of the search functions. And so I think from the standpoint of this particular pilot initiative, sort of strike while the iron's hot. There's still a lot of interest there, despite some of the, trend lines relative to people coming back to the office. It's still not in an accelerated space by any means. People are going back to the office. I went for the first time really in 2 years, went back to our Chicago office yesterday, but essentially one day. And I probably won't go back again for, a couple months, and maybe just stop in. And so whether it's sort of hybrid practices or once every, few months as there's a particular meeting or what have you, that is probably going to be more of a new norm situation than obviously going back to, February of 2020 kind of cycles. So I think from that standpoint, every prediction I've seen is that, this will remain still a real growth area. And the other fact is that employees, which have the power right now in terms of labor and workforce, the pendulum is on the worker side. They do not want to come back to the office. Now, they may want to go back occasionally, but not in the situation of 5 days a week, and where their livability, work-life balance is now tied back to what was formerly there. So that's just sort of a preamble that I think you're on the right track. I think there's wonderful opportunities. And, that's the whole part of this pilot initiative is with each one of you is to kind of better understand your own sort of unique value proposition in this space. I don't think everyone will be the same. You all have different sort of variables and unique assets and features. And so my sense is that we'll go into this with a process, obviously, but the outcomes could look totally different. And just like in Main Street, how you work your downtown, how you shape your 4 points and work in those areas can be quite different. So let me go to poll screen. And given, I look at this as like, this is our cohort. We should be sort of relaxed and, you can ask questions and this is a dialogue and we're going to sort of work through this together. And so let me go here, window. Okay. All right. So let's just go. Oh, I got to plug in real quick. Sorry about that. Okay. Yes, I know my battery is.
We lost him already.
Yes, we seem to have lost Matt. So I'm going to take a little pause and I'm going to go find him.
So it looks like we have Harrisonburg represented here as well as Buena Vista.
Yeah, it looks like Harrisonburg, Marion, Buena Vista,
Okay.
Gray, and Highland County.
Highland County is here.
Mm-hmm. And
So-
surprisingly, the vast majority of you are in the Shenandoah Valley.
That answers my question.
Mhm.
Sorry, gang. I've never had it where it shut off so quickly. Like it didn't even give me 5 seconds to plug in. All right. So let me go. Let's try this again. All right. Okay. So obviously, congratulations are in order, and I think we'd be remiss if we didn't indicate that. And one, thank you all for sort of going through this process. We're certainly excited about it. I think I can speak on behalf of my colleagues at the Virginia Main Street as we move through this. As I indicated before, definitely cutting new ground here. And my sense is we also have an opportunity, and not to put a lot of pressure on here, but I think we can springboard this into, sort of case study and other models that can be used not only in Virginia, obviously, but throughout, and certainly from a national perspective. That's a great, intriguing value. Also, maybe just do a few introductions. And I know many of you on the call, but not everyone. And so let me just stop sharing real quick so I can see your faces. Maybe let's just do a round of intros, and maybe just a quick sort of aside is what you hope to accomplish through your participation, sort of the why here. So let me go in. I gotta remember I'm on Google Meets instead of Teams or Zoom. Patty, why don't we start with you if that's okay, and maybe you can do your intro, which community you represent, and sort of what you hope to get out of this. Oh, you're on mute, Patty.
I'm from Highland County, and we are looking at this as a way to increase maybe our population, create more small business, that kind of thing.
Okay, great. I will note that right now in my refrigerator, there's only about this much left, Patty. I'm thankful I'm coming back because I got some maple syrup in the refrigerator, but it's pretty low.
All right.
So it's going to be good to come back.
Good.
All right, thanks, Patty. Tom, let's move over to you.
Hi, yes, I'm Tom Roberts, Director of Community Development for Buena Vista. And, we're doing a lot of, revitalization here. And I think there's just a whole lot of potential for Buena Vista. And so I want to just kind of figure out how for remote workers. So I want to figure out how we can position ourselves and kind of what we need to do for that.
All right, cool. All right, Christina.
Hi, Christina Rancy. I'm Economic Development for Buena Vista as well. And just adding on what Tom said is more diversity, exploring how we can make Buena Vista more diverse, historic and industrial, and we have some universities and education now, but kind of switching it up a little bit.
Yeah, okay, wonderful. Pierce?
Hey, good morning, everybody. I'm Pierce McGill, Assistant Director of Economic Development for the City of Harrisonburg. And yeah, I look at this as really a talent attraction initiative and really a longer term play. So it would be great to get folks here as remote workers, and then maybe, hey, I think I'll work for Company X here in Harrisonburg so we can help our existing businesses.
Yeah, okay. All right. Yeah, given the workforce situation, you're right. Any way to get population in your community. Ken, how about you?
I'm here for the free margaritas that I understand Rebecca's bringing later, so I appreciate that.
Well, you know Rebecca really well.
Well, good. That's why we're waiting for next week or next month when we're up in Richmond. I'm Community and Economic Development Director for the town of Marion since '94, Main Street Director as well. And the reason we're doing this is we have an abundance of outdoor recreation, historic buildings here that we have filled up. Lowest vacancy rate in our Main Street. We continue to have under 4.5%. And we have a new college here. Emory and Henry has developed a School of Health Sciences here. We're seeing a tremendous opportunity for us to move into the next generation of the workforce here. For people like my sister who works for Moses Cone Hospital in Greensboro, who moved away from Marion as soon as she was old enough and never wanted to look back. And now every time I talk with her, she's coming in to visit, and they're allowing her to remote work from Greensboro. And she's seriously looking at moving and buying a house here to be able to come back to the quality of life we have here in Marion. And that's my inspiration. I think there are a lot of people out here that have either moved away or are looking for the opportunities we have here. And we just need to be able to figure out how to maximize those with reliable, affordable, and redundant broadband, with the business services, support services we need, with the housing stock that we need, and then also the marketing piece of that. So I'm here for how we can do that.
Excellent. All right. Good intro. Thanks, Ken. Rebecca, you want to say a few words? You're up on my screen next.
Yeah, I just wanted to introduce myself the same as everyone else. I'm Rebecca Rowe. I'm the Associate Director of the Community Revitalization Office here at Virginia Department of Housing and Community Development. And to reiterate Matt's point, I'm here so that Virginia can stay on the cutting edge and provide these services to our communities and really create a highly successful and replicable program for the rest of the state and the country. So no pressure on any of you or you, Matt. Make it happen.
Never. My only pressure will be in Richmond in a couple weeks. Courtney, I'm just kind of
Hi,
going
it's
through
my
my
closet,
screen.
everyone. Welcome to my closet. The little background won't work. I wanted to put a few words in for Lorraine, who couldn't join us this morning. They are actually experiencing an overrun of people from Fairfax County in particular. So they're becoming baby Fairfax, and they need some assistance figuring out how to manage this influx of new residents that have a very different way of approaching life. It's not a bad way. They're very motivated, want to be engaged, want to do everything, and it's just a lot for local folks. So we're hoping to learn how old and new can live together.
Awesome. Thanks, Courtney. Kyle, I think I see you on here.
I am here. You can probably hear me typing. I didn't even realize that I didn't have myself unmuted.
You're fine.
Or muted, pardon me. Kyle Meyer. I work primarily with the eastern part of Virginia. So unfortunately for this pilot, none of you guys are within my region. But I work primarily with Virginia Main Street. I've got 3 of the newly designated communities that came on board in 2020, Cape Charles, Tappahannock, and Onancock. And I've been working a lot with communities that are along the shore. There seems to be a lot of interest around really tending to caring for those communities in a little different way than they have in the past, being a bit more intentional. So I think that there's a lot of changes that are happening. And I do a lot of facilitations and teaching and doing a lot of our educational activities here at Virginia Main Street.
Awesome. Thanks,
Yeah.
Kyle.
Yeah.
There's some squares I cannot see, although I know there's others. So if you haven't introduced yourself, could you pop up on the screen and say hello?
I'm Chris. I'm with the Highland County Chamber of Commerce. I would echo Patty's sentiments about kind of what our program is looking for here, and particularly with younger, we have an aging population, trying to capture the youth and younger families as well. So appreciate the opportunity.
Excellent. Thanks, Chris. Who else? I think we've got a few others.
Hi, everyone. I'm Andrea Dono. I'm the director.
Andrea.
Hey, Matt and everybody. I'm the director of Harrisonburg Downtown Renaissance. I work very closely with Pierce in so many different things. And I echo his comments, but also am interested to see with this kind of strategy, how far can we go? Like, what can our reach be? Can we bring people from as far as New York City, or are we really just trying to steal like Richmond and DC folks?
Okay.
And
so
also
real geographic focus.
Yeah. Like how far can this strategy extend to, especially because we have a university here with a lot of people who graduate like Pierce, who move away and then try and come back for JMU. And we also have a challenge here. We have a very hot housing market. And what do we do in that situation? Because we've got a lot of cool lofts downtown with exposed brick and stuff, but people want to own, right? So what happens then? So we're excited to be part of it. Thanks for doing this with us.
Awesome. Thanks.
So Elizabeth Lore Myers typed in the chat box that she will need us to rely on her Highland peers for the introduction, as she doesn't have a camera or microphone, but Elizabeth is here from Highland. And Zachary Whitlow, do you want to introduce yourself?
Oh, Zachary, all right.
Yeah, sure. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. I was having some issues there. Hey, everybody. I'm Zachary Whitlow with Virginia Main Street. I'm excited to be here today, and I'm really looking forward to seeing how the work through this program really helps inform and strengthens everyone's comprehensive revitalization strategy. So this is really awesome. And like Kyle said, we work in different areas with Virginia Main Street. I don't have any of you as direct representatives in my regions, but I do work closely with Highland County through the Rural Community Development Initiative program that we're currently undertaking. So excited to be here and look forward to seeing what goes on.
All right, great. Okay,
I
think we've got.
that's everyone. Matt, do you see on the bottom of your screen there the 3 little dots?
Yes, I do.
Okay, click on that. Go to change layout, and you can do tiled, and you can have up to 50 something people. So now you can see everything.
Ah, wonderful. I only use Google
no one
Meets
uses Google Meets but the Commonwealth of Virginia. So
I know. Only when I'm on Virginia meetings do I use Google Meet. So I'm a little bit behind on my Google Meets technology up front. So I appreciate that. Thanks, Rebecca. That's very, very helpful. Okay, let me go back. And what I want to do now is kind of walk you through some of our thinking, not only on the process for the visit. I want to go through a draft agenda, get your feedback on that. But I also want to talk about sort of the research side of this and where we're going in terms of different data points that we think will help us in kind of mapping the sort of what we're calling kind of a remote ability index as we're thinking about it. What are all the indicators that go into creating, communities that are successful or have advantages, opportunities in remote work, and what would those indicators sort of look like? And then I'll also talk about if by knowing that, what kinds of things then can we learn about your community? What kinds of themes can come out of that then you can react to in terms of strategy, programming, projects, et cetera, that better position you within this this space. So let me go back to the screen here. Okay. All right. So we've already gotten started on thinking through what would be sort of these evaluation indicators. So over the last, I would say, actually probably over the last year and sort of in tandem with what Virginia Main Street was doing with its, I think you called it, Rebecca, the Community Vitality Series or something along those lines, where remote work was a key sort of underpinning of that. So here are some of the areas that we'll be researching in each of the 5 communities in Virginia. Obviously, just looking at sort of baseline assets around remote workspaces, what's there. And while most people are looking at just sort of standalone co-work, what we're finding is a lot of sort of hybridization here, even what people are calling sort of collision spaces. For instance, there's a brewery in Indiana that has a co-work space. Now, I wouldn't advise maybe spending all day there. That could get a little deadly. But nonetheless, it sort of coincides with kind of the third space movement. We're certainly seeing the privatization of co-work, obviously starting with WeWorks, but starting to see as, maybe changes in the office sector in all kinds of communities, whether or not property owners, private businesses will move in this. And this won't just remain, obviously, the domain of a nonprofit or existing businesses that find a way to incorporate remote work as part of their business model. I know we mentioned technology infrastructure, and it's not just, obviously one thing is on the fiber broadband side, but also cell coverage, et cetera, as we even certainly see Verizon and T-Mobile with their 5G system trying to move into more rural markets as a, it certainly doesn't take the place of broadband, but can certainly make a difference. I mean, they're even offering, obviously, like Wi-Fi connectivity for streaming using 5G. And so there is no sort of hardline connection. You guys also brought up, Andrea did, around housing. And so that's what determining through data sets the availability. There's some affordability indices that we can draw on. And then there's also a diversity indice. I think it's called like the Smith, I don't know. It's a data set that you can look at where we'll be able to, on a scale, better understand what is the likelihood of having different types of housing availability in your community. So it's not just single family, but you have, maybe apartments, condos, upper floor living. What does that diversity look like, and where does it fall on a scale in comparison to other areas? Third spaces being one of those other dynamics that commonly is thought of. My son, who's 23, is an entrepreneur himself and works out of a cadre of different cafes. I'm not sure if he's in breweries or wineries or distilleries, but he's certainly in lots of coffee houses. The level of Airbnb access, we know that there is a place for Airbnb in the remote workspace, as 68% growth in month-long stays over this past year. It now represents nearly 25% of Airbnb access or stays, I should say. And so that being maybe not long-term, but an entry point. Think of it as like pipeline into perhaps then someone ultimately moving there, or just passing through and kind of creating opportunities as they pass through. Recreation being one of those other areas that has been a big draw. It's been a primary draw in many cases for more rural areas for remote workers to kind of get that work-life balance. There are a number, again, of indices, data points that we're tracking right now for your communities around density levels to number of miles, et cetera, ranging from parks to trails to blueways, et cetera. I noted that there was a indicator from Andrea around geographic proximity, how far you can stretch that out. There's been a lot of work in how population is impacted based on proximity to airports, interstates, and from major metropolitan areas. Often we can see that at the 500,000 to million, and even greater than million. And so we'll look at hours from there, and where does that sort of place you is another indicator. Institutions of higher education, no doubt, from cultural amenities to just talent pipeline that you can perhaps capture, or as many of you talked about, sort of boomerang back perhaps. There's been some more recent news around, because of census continuing to release data around population shifts from birth and death rates, to comparing that to in-migration into counties. And we're checking, and fingers crossed, but we think that based on some conversations with Lombard Hamilton out of the University of Virginia, that the U.S. Postal Service will begin releasing data points on move, change of address that we can hopefully get a hold of, that would not only show in your own community where people were changing address, but then where they were from, which would be huge, because right now census doesn't really give us that indication. It only shows where they're moving to, but not necessarily for your particular community or area where they came from. So that could be another really value add, and we're exploring that right now, even if it's like a private data set. Employment sectors, I think one of the folks in Marion talked about like their sister, in healthcare and having that opportunity. There are certainly, based on research, there are sectors that are much more conducive to having remote work. And so if we can identify that, which is largely around IT, healthcare, fire, there's also sort of an affinity that if you have those, there's a density of people already kind of working in that can be an attraction to others, whether it's network groups or what have you. We'll also look at micro venture density as a way to better understand. Many remote workers might have side hustles, sort of gig economy kinds of work, and micro venture density gives us an ability to kind of see what kind of concentrations are already there and how they compare to US or other Virginia communities, or I should say counties, in that micro. That work comes out of GoDaddy. We'll also be just looking at sort of just the presence of remote work networking groups, even like Facebook groups that are around that, whether it's formal or informal. Are there any sort of incentive programs or housing programs that might make things more possible? And this is just to see whether or not, they exist, how active, and many may not have these things right now, and those might result in sort of strategy lines. And then there's a couple of other sort of indices that play on the fringe of remote work, sort of like talent indices, and we can draw upon those. Most of those would have your areas that we can sort of look at those scores, and some of these things are sort of aligned. So this is kind of a start of different research that will come when we come to the community for your assessment. We'll already have this data and we'll share that with you. So part of the day spent with you will kind of be reviewing this, getting feedback, figuring out where there might be opportunities based on some of this data or challenge areas that we need to address. But we feel like we need some underlying, not just observational and not just through conversations, but what's the data showing us in some of these areas, so that we can best position the recommendations and where your strategies might play out. So let me stop there, just in terms of kind of like these underlying indicators. Any feedback, thoughts, maybe where you see some gaps, things that we should add here that we haven't been thinking about. So certainly open to additional recommendations. The just last thing I'll say before I open it up is, our hope is if we're able to do it for the 5 communities, and Rebecca, this is for you and your team, we think then we can map this out for all the Virginia Main Streets, so they at least have their underlying data. It would be pretty easy once you do it, for this group. It's pretty easy then to just create it for everyone. So there might be some residual value here in doing this for all the other programs.
And I'm sure that value will be returned to Virginia in a myriad of ways, Matt.
Yes, exactly. All right. Other comments about this, or questions, or additions, maybe things that you're not seeing here that you think are sort of draws for remote workers that we haven't picked up on? Okay, maybe
I think it's a great list. I think you've done a great job, and exciting to gather this data. I love the list.
Cool. All right. I'll keep going. And
hey, Matt.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I'm wondering, in terms of institutions of higher education, if we should specify trade schools there as well, or something to indicate the spectrum.
Yeah, we can sort of call that out. There are some mapping and some data sets that have like every institution above that's post K through 12 that would be included here. So yeah, we'll definitely make sure that we try to capture. What I'll have to check with Mike, Rebecca on is whether or not it will pick up any sort of like, I don't want to say private, because obviously it'll pick up private institutions, but like private in the sense of like there are things that where like you pay, but they're probably not like maybe certified or credentialed in some ways. So just making sure we cover the full landscape. Okay. Anything else? All right. Let me so our thinking is by going through this process, getting some of the underlying data. I'll share what we'll do on site, but the initial areas that sort of the themes that allow, if we have this knowledge, we think we can be able to sort of better predict, better understand things like who's the best target audience for you. Because not all remote workers sort of are the same. They have varying age groups to them. They certainly come from different sectors of the economy. There's a target geography component to this. You know, where should you best place if you're doing marketing or sort of branding strategies for your community? To Andrea's point, like, am I aiming for primarily the sort of Richmond? Is it DC Metroplex? Can I go further out? You know, where am I placed here? So target audience sectors and then target geographies as well. There's obviously a place and real estate component, whether that's on housing, you know, co-work space, third spaces, these collision spaces. You know, what does that look like here? How does place programming in our real estate activities? So that will be something else that we're evaluating from a recommendation perspective. Is there programming components, whether that's like brand identities, like social networks, or, you know, like networking activities, things that bring, you know, obviously people together. So what does that look like within your community, or could look like? Are there incentives? I mean, it's crazy, all the different communities now that are doing everything from like some cash to giving away a bicycle, to helping out with a down payment on a home. And it's varying from now, you know, communities that are doing this to obviously some state governments. And so there may be, you know, policy recommendations, not only on the local community side, but maybe there's a Virginia component to this. Your neighbor, obviously right on the border with Highland County in West Virginia, has a state remote work incentive. You know, is that a policy recommendation? So, you know, there may be things that come out of this for Rebecca and her team to be thinking about, or local communities to advocate for. Are there unique community positioning, just like in Main Street, and understanding your own sort of markets? Are there different ways that you all might want to position yourselves? Some might be positioned more in terms of like outdoor rec areas, and that's the benefit to a remote worker that's going to be moving there. For others, it might be housing affordability, or the ability, like in Highland County, like I've run into people there that were co-working in the Highland Center, and they were starting a farm and working for, I think it was like the UN or something. So like there's different ways to position what people might be interested that's unique to your particular community. Some other people might want like more sort of urban amenities, like culture, you know, a big university, lots of restaurants, high-end restaurants, or what have you. And that's going to be quite different. So, and then finally, are there internal audience opportunities? And what I mean by that is so much of our thinking on remote work, obviously, is about bringing people from the outside. But it can also, we're starting to see some programming that's kind of in reverse, where how can we, especially in maybe struggling labor markets, where we're trying to increase wealth, because what you know is that remote work typically, you know, are professionals, they're higher wage earners, et cetera. They're bringing wealth to a community. But it's also possible, and this is happening in Utah right now, where they're looking at rural workers, upscaling, and then allowing them, because of remote work, to stay where they want to be, which is in those communities, but have a better paying job somewhere else, in a technology field or something like that. So looking at maybe even internal audience opportunities that then raise the wealth, raise the income levels of communities, and allows people to be able to stay there and not have to go to, again, a dense concentration of work areas. So those are some of the, if we've got this data, and we're going through this process, we think we can then review those for recommendations in sort of these particular areas. And as we, I guess, talked about, and you were, talking through what you were hoping to accomplish, I think we hit most of those areas here. But again, I'll stop and say, well, I was hoping we might be able to address XYZ question. Any thoughts here? Okay. Can always come back. I will send this out to everyone afterwards. And if there's things that kind of pop up after you have a chance to talk with your colleagues or think through this more, feel free to send the team, our team, Virginia Main Street America team, any sort of questions or discussion points. Okay. All right. So as you know, we're going to be out on site. There is an on-site component to this, because just like in market analysis, data kind of only gets you so far. And there is context, especially when you're talking about people's decisions about, where they're going to live, how are they going to be able to operate in their work function and live in your community. There is a lot of context to that requires you to kind of feel the vibe, be able to look around, visually see sort of what the data is saying, but it doesn't give you that visual kind of sense. And so here's how we're thinking about the agenda. And again, interested in obviously any feedback. This is in draft form. We can certainly massage this. But the first point is just is sitting down with your team, who you think of as your team, and we can talk through that. Are there folks that might be best positioned on that team, but to review and assess sort of those indicator data points. We want to spend some time reviewing that. We'll send it in advance, of course, but I suspect there'll be questions, and we'll want to talk about, well, what does that mean? What do these various points mean for you? That will enable us then to better formulate questions, what we should be looking for as we tour the community. We'll just be much more informed as we get feedback from you all on the research, okay? And then certainly thinking that having some sort of tour of the community, whether you want to show us sort of housing stock, are there places where you're seeing new people move into, what you think of as like remote work assets, whether that's an educational institution, third spaces, things that people are trying to do or set up that promote remote work. Just kind of give us a feel for the community. And then we'll have kind of a working lunch to make the most of our day. We thought this would be great if you could identify in advance, and I would encourage perhaps like 7 to 9, with a focus group. If you have too much more than you start getting into double digits, a lot of people just don't talk. It's not sort of small enough. They're intimidated by it, or you can't go through everyone. If it's too small, you don't really get a true sort of view shed of what the remote work experience here. So we tend to kind of fall in that 7 to 9 range is a good portion. So if we could identify some local remote workers that could participate in some sort of focus group, that would be great. We'll facilitate it. What we'll walk them through is just trying to better understand, what attracted them to the area, what's their background, what's their needs, where they see sort of problem areas, where they see opportunities, are there others like them, etc. And so we'll probably end up, by the time we do intros, we'll probably spend about 75 minutes. So we carve out 90 minutes of time. That's usually enough where you can take a deep enough dive into this. And we'll test some concepts that come out of the research and see how they react to them. Does it sort of jive with their thinking? And then we'll move into sort of the stakeholders. Who do you perceive as the key stakeholders, the players that can impact this space? Again, whether it's local universities or higher education, economic development chambers, city, that kind of thing, maybe property owners, Airbnb owners, just think through, and we can work with you all and sort of like, figuring that out one-on-one in advance. Certainly can start to brainstorm, because it may be different in each one of your communities. But we'll have a facilitated discussion on trying to get a lay of the land. Is there anything currently happening in this space programmatically? Things that we can either build from or try not to duplicate in our recommendations, of course. How do they perceive opportunities and challenges? So we'll have the viewpoint of the remote worker, and then those that are kind of working in that space, or even, sort of in tangent. You could also have like people that represent certain sectors like healthcare or IT that are typically high in remote workers as a sector, or someone that's leading the broadband initiative. So those are just some examples. Okay, and again, that kind of like 7 to 9 grouping seems to make a lot of sense there, and it gives us a chance to kind of deep dive. Then what we want to do is just have a little bit of quick time to kind of review our notes from the day. So we just have like a room that we're going to use for the last session as a wrap up, just so we can put sort of, this is what we think we heard today. Here's some of our thoughts going forward, things that we can test out as we bring back your local remote work team, where we can give you just some of our initial observations and review some potential recommendations, get some feedback before we leave. So directionally, we've already got some alignment before we dive into the summary report. So that's kind of the thinking around the agenda for the day, and just want to stop there and see if there's questions, thoughts, feedback on that.
This all sounds good to me. This is Andrea in Harrisonburg.
Andrea.
I would be interested, as people figure out who's going to be part of their remote work teams and who they're inviting, what other communities are doing, because it might inspire me and Pierce to think about who might be part of this too from Harrisonburg. So we'd love to hear what others are thinking about with this.
Yeah, perfect. Okay. Maybe what we'll do is we could send out, when we send this out, maybe what we could do, Courtney, is maybe put like a question so that you can all send us back who you all are thinking about, and then we can kind of compare notes and just share that with the group. So everyone see, oh, I didn't think about having that person or, that stakeholder around the table. Does that sound good to everyone? Just to kind of create some discussion amongst all of you.
That sounds good to me.
All right, cool. Okay. And then just reiterating the assessment visit dates. Hopefully this is still all cool with everyone. We're kind of on a fast track here. I know with conference, especially with the folks in Virginia Main Street, this is tough. But we're gonna do it. We think we can position this, get this work, at least this first phase, in over the next month or two. As summer approaches, and doing site visits always gets a little difficult because people are so busy during that time. So hopefully this all still works. If not, let us know. And but I think everyone's pretty committed on their respective dates. I'm certainly looking forward to seeing. There's some communities I haven't been to yet, so that's always fun. And then finally, just so you can kind of see where this is going, after the assessment visit, we're going to come back with like a summary report, some mapping data, etc., recommendations, and then we'll have a web meeting with you and your team to kind of review and try to align on like what does phase 2 look like. That is part of the initiative where we've built in a phase 2 where we could take a recommendation that's, you know, some sort of project or a program plan, or maybe it's, you know, looking at feasibility of an idea, and we can sort of blow that up in more detail for you. That probably, just like in small scale, the small scale pilot, it might not be me, it might be us hiring someone, because generally this is probably something that's highly specialized, might be something that's really technical in nature or whatever. We'll try to find the right form for that. But just know that after phase 1, you will have this opportunity to kind of take a deeper dive. I just put some examples here, but obviously it's not limited to this, but I could see where, you know, maybe a community wants to do a co-work space and they want to do a feasibility analysis. What would it look like? How much would you charge? How would it operate? Maybe there's a space that you've already identified, or maybe it's a programming plan or a social network that you want to do, and sort of understand like what kinds of things would you do at the meeting? How would it operate? Or even a branding strategy as part of a marketing tool that you could employ through your program, or even like a recruitment plan. So instead of a business recruitment, maybe it is truly like a talent attraction initiative. And what sector and what geography should you be doing it? How would you do that? That could be put into a plan. So these are just ideas. And obviously we won't know until we get through this, but just wanted to give you a sense that it would probably come then in the summer months and into early fall. And then we would come back, present that, obviously, and hopefully you would have that then an outline for implementation and execution. So I think that's it, and I'll stop sharing here. I think we're close to time, and just open it up, and if there's any questions, comments, feedback for myself and our team here.
So Matt, one of the things that I was thinking about is for some of that phase 2 stuff, I always see people on social media posting houses on their blocks that go up for sale, or, you know, like something really cool that's happening. They're like, hey friends, you should move here to Harrisonburg and come join me. So I wonder if there's campaigns that could be developed that we could create for people to adopt and share. That way they can reach their networks too. That could go, you know, throughout the country, really.
Yeah, it's almost like a spider web effect. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's cool. So like you develop the campaign, but it's kind of like a crowdsourced campaign in some ways, and then it's shared and sort of spirals. Yeah, that's very cool.
Yeah, but we're excited. This looks fun.
Cool. All right.
Patty, you had your hand raised.
Just Patty? Playing with the icon, but but I thought it was a place to write, but obviously I was not right. I have to go, but I just wanted to say what a great presentation this was, and how much I'm looking forward to this whole process. So thank you very much, but I'm going to have to go.
Looking forward to working with you all.
All right. Bye-bye.
All right. Thanks, Patty. Anything else? Like I said, I'll send this out. And then as you have any questions, follow up, I'll put the question around like, who are you all thinking about for your stakeholder and your local teams? And that way we can share with one another. We'll put like a little listing together, almost like of typologies. And then, you know, again, it might be a sort of a eureka moment. Oh, I didn't think about those folks. Because if anything, and again, I don't want to speak for my colleagues, but I think they'll agree. Like they're looking at this as a cohort. Like there's learning that can be shared. You all are sort of different in your own unique ways, and by sharing, that'll be an even bigger learning moment that then can be sort of assimilated to the other Main Street programs in Virginia. So that's certainly part of the probably unspoken, but certainly there as part of the outcomes to this initiative.
It's nice here in the Valley with so many we can not only share, but it's easy enough to go visit.
Yeah, exactly.
I was just about to say the same thing, Pierce.
You know, I was thinking as we're looking at doing some of these visits, if there was an opportunity, maybe one of those nights to get the Shenandoah Valley folks together for dinner one day or something like that, do some walking tours of the other districts. Sorry, Ken, you're welcome to join us in Shenandoah Valley, and maybe we can get folks down to your neck of the woods too. We don't want to exclude Ken and Marion. But I'm also, you know, very much cognizant of Andrea's point earlier around getting ideas from other folks, and that we do want to create a cohort feeling here. At the same time, as the state, we don't really have access to Slack channels and things like that. A couple of things that we could do is, you know, create some Google documents that we've created an external Gmail address so that we can share those documents with folks. So we could do that. We could also set up a private Facebook group. So, you know, just real quickly, does anyone have any thoughts on what platform you would prefer us to use for those conversations and connections?
Rebecca, are we going to have group calls periodically during this time, do you think?
We can certainly look at that. I don't know that we have any on the calendar right now, but you guys tell us what you want us to set up and we'll set it up.
Yeah. It's a good idea.
Yeah, I think as we kind of move through this whole process together, we'll kind of see the things that we're discussing and brainstorming around and might need some inspiration or help or group chats with other folks. So it's kind of hard to know right now because it's so new, but I feel like organically we'll figure out what we might need and then might be able to say like, hey, can we do our own Slack or can we have a Facebook group or something?
Absolutely. And, you know, certainly other people can set up a Slack and invite us to be members of that. Just, you know, again, we're Google Meets, not Zoom in so many senses.
Says it all, right?
Yeah, it really does. But yeah, we'll definitely, let's keep an open dialogue and open communication so that as we start to progress through the different activities, you all can tell us how we as the state coordinating program can be supporting this work and supporting all of you in this work.
That sounds good. And I don't know who else is going to the Main Street Conference in Richmond in a few weeks, but I'll be there.
Yeah. I hope
we're
to see everyone there.
Out an invitation, or actually, I think we did send out an invitation for our Virginia dinner, which is going to be on Monday night this time, not on Tuesday night. So definitely we'll have folks in the room together for that too.
I understand there's going to be a great presentation Wednesday right before lunch. And at the end of that, there's going to be alcohol. So if you attend. I gotta have somebody sit there other than me just talking.
I'm really interested in the Marion visit and what's going to happen on that one.
Just be prepared, my friend. Just be prepared.
I want to see some mason jars when we're in Marion.
That's
some
right.
mason jars. There may be some cigars floating around. It's hard to tell. It's the Boshery is the name
That's
of the
right.
The game.
That's right.
He's courting us already.
Yeah. All right. Any other comments? This is great, and we'll be sure to note. And maybe it would make sense right after, sort of regardless, is like right after the visits, having some sort of cohort group, conversation, and then to Andrew's point, then we'll see if what other kind of tentacles might be there or needed based on the dialogue, sort of organically. Okay. All right. Well, thanks again for everyone's time, and so looking forward to getting out into the communities, working on this project with you. It's a great bunch of folks. So hats off to the Virginia Main Street team for choosing such really cool communities to work in for this initiative. And we'll see you all in a few weeks in Richmond. So looking forward to it.
Matt,
Great.
can you stay after class?
Whoops, was there a question?
Matt, can you stay after class?
I can stay after class. Yes, I can.
Okay.
At least for a couple minutes.
Stop recording.
Okay.
Thank you all.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Kyle, please stop recording.
Yes, yes.
Ooh, Courtney's about to say something that she
Important.
doesn't want to be recorded.
No,
Courtney
no,
has-
no. I just
Courtney has
didn't
me
want
worried.
to go